The voices of Africa's youth are shaping the conversation about the continent's future. So the African Youth Survey of 2026 provides fresh insights into how the South African youth are navigating the rising cost of living, are navigating unemployment and economic uncertainty, while also remaining optimistic about Africa's long-term prospects. Joining us to discuss the survey's key findings and what they reveal about the priorities as well as aspirations of the continent's future leaders, we're now joined by Youth Survey Commissioner, that's Ivor Ichikowitz, now on the program. Thank you for your time on the program. Welcome to it.
Thank you. It's great to be here. It's great to be here at such an exciting time in the history of our continent and the history of our country.
Yeah, interesting time indeed. And I'm always passionate about something that relates to our youth, because here's the thing, when we have this conversation, you get a sense that the voices of Africa's youth are shaping the various conversations about the continent's future. But you feel that South Africa's youth is not tracking with the rest of Africa. Why?
You know, since the pandemic, this year's survey shows us the most optimistic African youth numbers we've ever seen. So right across the continent, the youth of Africa are rising up and they are being positive about their continent, they're being positive about their countries. And South Africa, which should be leading the pack, we should have the most positive youth, we have the most incredible country, the most incredible potential, and we're the most negative of all. And that makes me as a South African very, very sad, because as excited as I am to see Africa the trajectory of Africa heading in a very, very positive direction, I'm watching South Africa on a decline, which is really, really unforgivable.
Mr. Ichikowitz, then what do we tie this to? What's your preliminary assessment? Because I know that in the intro we spoke about things such as unemployment, we spoke about economic uncertainty. Are those some of the factors that we tie this to?
So I think when we look at the African youth generally, we mustn't confuse youth optimism for satisfaction. What the African youth is saying is that we're optimistic about our future because we understand we have agency. We understand that we can no longer rely on our governments. We're going to take our reality into our own hands, and we're going to make sure that we stand toe-to-toe with the youth elsewhere in the world. What's unfortunately happened in South Africa is we come from a political history where we were given the expectation that our government was going to provide. We were given the expectation that if you voted for the ANC, you would get a house, you would get a job, and your prosperity would be ensured. Well, the truth is no government can provide. No government can provide. And the difference between the rest of the youth in Africa and the youth in South Africa is the rest of the youth in Africa have realized that no government can provide, and we in South Africa are still waiting for our governments to fix our reality. And I think that the day that changes, South Africa will change exponentially.
I'm going to come in there because I want you to further break this down for me. When you say that there's a sense that the South African youth is waiting for things to happen, I want you to clarify that for me first, just so I hear you properly.
So the South African youth are complaining that there aren't enough jobs. They're complaining that corruption needs to be dealt with. They're complaining that government isn't providing. The rest of the continent is saying, we're not expecting our governments to create jobs. Give us the opportunity to be entrepreneurs, and government, please get out of our way. They're saying, we're not happy with our circumstances, but we're going to go and do something about it. And if our governments can't provide, we're going to move somewhere that can. What happened in Spain today was a prediction of the youth survey, because the youth survey told us that young Africans would migrate if they were not given the opportunities in their own countries. So please don't get me wrong. This survey is not saying that everything on the continent is fantastic and that the future of the continent is on a positive trajectory because the structural issues underpin that. What it's saying is that we have a new generation of leaders, a new generation of young people that are not going to sit and wait to be provided for. They're going to take things into their own hands. And that's both positive in one sense and very frightening in another sense, because the African youth believe generally in democracy. You know, it's very interesting. Most of the people that we talk to in the survey are telling us that democracy is the way forward. But more than 50% are saying they're not going to go and vote. So what does that tell you? It means that they're going to exercise their democracy in some other way.
Yeah, which of course the youth will be doing as well come November here in the country as well. So I just want to get a sense of how getting insights for this particular survey went like, especially with the note that you've just shared now around South Africa's youth in particular. If someone were to come to you and say, listen, I think that argument that you make now is flawed, particularly around the South African youth, where you would have many youths right now that are not just sitting on their behinds in their homes just waiting for things to fall in their laps, but are purely because they do not have access to opportunities, where there's a Vusi who wakes up on a Monday to Wednesday trying to go find work but cannot find work. Would Vusi still be classified as what you say now as someone that's sitting at home? And just give me those insights around the survey itself, because I'm trying to understand it as a whole.
Oh no, don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that Vusi wants to sit at home. Vusi feels that he has no agency. And I think that the difference between what we're seeing in the rest of Africa and what we're seeing in South Africa is that in the rest of Africa, there is a demand by the youth on government to get out of the way and give them agency. In South Africa, we still have to go through that inflection point. You know, one of the things that disturbs me most in South Africa is that we fought for generations for liberation so that we could vote. The South African youth are telling us that more than 50% are not going to go and vote. So how do we change our reality? How do we get the government we deserve if we're not going to go and vote? And I'm not suggesting that Vusi doesn't have the potential to change his circumstances, but if he doesn't believe he has agency to change his circumstances, that becomes a very serious problem. And a lot of it has to do with the general sense of pessimism that exists in the country at the moment. Unfortunately, where the rubber hits the road, people's lives are being affected by an incredibly high cost of living, and the youth are telling us that that is affecting them every single day. The fact that it is very difficult to be an entrepreneur in South Africa because of lack of access to capital, because of lack of access to opportunities, because of lack of government support to make it easy to start businesses. The fact that government has failed us in terms of creating foreign investment that allows high-paying jobs to happen, putting people like Vusi in a situation where something has got to give. Yeah. And that something is coming around the corner. I'm just very concerned that if we don't deal with it, it's going to be something that is going to undo all of the years of the struggle that we've been through.
Yeah, and what you say now also just ventures straight into another aspect of the conversation, which we segue to now around, I think there's a term around what you just mentioned now, and that's voter apathy, where we see young people decide to, choose not to go and vote because of ABC, right? But also you make mention of agency, which is another thing which you say young people have, right? But don't you think that agency is pointless when there's no opportunity, when there's no youth support, when there's no economic freedom? What's the use of having it?
I had the privilege of spending 11 years of my life making a documentary on the life of Winnie Mandela. And Winnie Mandela lived in an environment where there really was no agency. But she believed that she could change the world, and she set her mind to getting an entire community behind her to change her reality. And what we need in the South African environment right now is that spark that gets people to understand that they cannot expect government to deliver what they hope government can deliver. Government's job is to create an enabling environment. Government's job is then to get out of the way. We have our most valuable resource base in South Africa. It's not our gold, it's not our coal, it's our human capital. And that human capital sits today in our youth. And I think that the day that we as a country realize that the youth are not a problem to be managed, but a power source, an energy source to be harnessed, then South Africa will truly achieve its potential.
So, in a perfect world, ideally, what role does the youth play? What role does the government play in it all?
So first of all, a government that doesn't engage with the youth at every single level isn't a government of the youth. You know, the youth are on the menu in many, many discussions, but the youth are very seldom at the table. And I think that the next generation
Which
of
is not
leadership...
their fault.
That's absolutely not their fault. 100%. But it's time that the youth actually demand to be at the table. That's in their hands. Cannot wait to be invited to the table. The youth in Kenya today are not waiting to be invited to the table. They have made it very clear to their government that they are at the table, whether the government like it or not. And please, don't get me wrong, I'm not calling people to the streets. I think that's completely the wrong way of dealing with this. I think that this is about dialogue. This is about the youth being prepared, like Winnie Mandela did, to get out there and make their voices heard. And the minute that happens, government will be forced to listen. How do you fix a municipality that has completely collapsed? The only way to do that is for the people in that municipality to go out there and say, if you can't fix this, we're going to take charge and we're going to sort out our environment ourselves. And I think that the call to action in South Africa is around the fact that we do have agency. We just have to believe we have agency. It's the people of South Africa who are going to change South Africa. The same way as the people of Kenya are in the process of changing Kenya. The same way as that in so many other countries in Africa, that realization has been achieved.
All right, I must thank you so much for your time and insights on the program. I wish you had more time to further expand on this because it's quite a hot potato. But thank you so much in the meantime for your insights.
Absolutely. The youth of Africa have a voice, and they're telling us what they think. Policymakers, governments, investors just need to listen to their voice. That's all we want to achieve.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time on the program. That's, of course, the Commissioner for the African Youth Survey. That's Ivor Ichikowitz joining us there on the program.